You are now listening to Wolf Sports Network, live from the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, now in Odyssey Station. Welcome to College Football Countdown. We get you started with football coverage of your West Georgia Wolves.
You mean to tell me these Wolves can't outscore them by at least 1 point here at University Stadium? Michael, give me the Wolf head!
Before covering the entire college football landscape.
So I don't know if the sheriff at Athens Clark County Police Department grew up a Georgia Tech fan. I don't know if he grew up an Alabama fan. I don't know if he graduated from the University of Florida. I have no idea what's going on over there. But this guy hates Georgia athletics.
And debating the hottest topics in college football.
The college football playoffs should not have expanded. We had the perfect format when we had 4 teams. And then now we go and we just let everybody in with 12 teams now.
This is College Football Countdown on Wolf Sports Network.
Good evening, everybody, and a welcome into another semester of WSN Wolf Sports Network. It has been a long, grueling 3 months since we have had a live show here at WSN, but I am here to tell you guys that we are back, baby. And you may notice this is a new show. This isn't a show that you're accustomed to seeing here on Wolf Sports Network. And when I was looking at it over the summer, I was like, I can bring back the playbook that I've hosted for the past 3 semesters, I think it's been. But I was like, you know what? I want to start something new. I want to start something fresh. And I could not ask for someone to start this with other than Michael Miller. And what we decided was we were like, we want to talk about the greatest sport of all time to mankind, without a doubt. And that is the greatest sport in the world, college football, better than any professional sport you'll ever find, because we have rivalries here. Things matter here. There's a way more of a hectic environment in college football than any other sport, bar none, and I will argue that until the day that I die. So, something else is new here. I don't think that we have had a 2-hour-long show here at Wolf Sports Network, but that all changes today. You guys are witnessing history as WSN Wolf Sports Network presents their first ever 2-hour live show strictly about college football. Michael Miller, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing phenomenal, Brandon. I've been waiting on this day for a long, long time. You know, me and you put this show together about a year ago. We decided, no, we want to have a college football show. The Playbook was a great show. I wasn't on it in the fall of last year, which really I regret. Gratefully, I wish I could have been a part of it, because college football, like you said, is the greatest sport on the face of the planet. It's my favorite sport. And, you know, getting to talk about college sports, you know, college baseball, basketball we did last semester was a lot of fun. But it's nothing compared to college football. And so I'm so excited to have this show. And we've been talking about it all summer long. And as you know, Brandon, as Josh Pate always says, there is no off season in college football. And there really isn't. There's always something to talk about. So we've been talking about it ever since the season ended back in January. And I'm so excited. 10 more days until the college football season officially kicks off. Week 0 is here. For the West Georgia Wolves, we got a football game coming up this Thursday. So for us, it starts this week. For everybody else playing Week 0, though, doesn't really matter outside the West Georgia Wolves playing. Week 1 is the real Week 1 here in 10 days.
I like the energy you're bringing over here, Michael. That's exactly why I chose you as the guy to do this show with. And we also have Joey Prater over here behind the board running it. Now, he's not going to have too much of a talking point in this show. He's mainly going to be making us sound good over there. And he's going to chime in on a few things here and there. You'll figure out later on in the show. But, Joey, how you feeling today?
Man, I'm happy we got a show going. I'd say I loved being on Playbook last year with doing college football, and happy to be doing a 2-hour live show now about it. Getting to chime in where I see fit and getting to, well, do some other stuff we'll get into during the show, obviously.
Oh, yeah, you've been on the Playbook that I was the host of for, again, 3 semesters. And good to have you back. Good to have somebody that's trustworthy over here running the board for us. Now, we're going to talk about this West Georgia game here in just a second. But before that, we got to pay the bills a little bit. And I've got to tell you guys to go check out our merch store, because when it comes to fandom, nothing matters more than the fit. The logo you wear solidifies your love. Now you can be a Wolf Sports Network fanatic with our brand new merch store powered by Ozier Apparel. Visit wolfsportsnetwork.com and click About Now. We're going to get into some West Georgia football. It's been 7 months, I think now, 8 months, since we have had football here in the city of dreams, Carrollton, Georgia. But that all changes in 48 hours as the West Georgia Wolves start their 2026 football season against the UT Chattanooga Mocs. If I'm reading that correctly, that is a Mocs, right?
I believe that is the correct
Yes,
pronunciation.
that's
a weird name
It's
for a team.
mascot.
Anyway, so we start the season off with them. Kickoff for that game is going to be 7 p.m., right?
I believe it's a 7 p.m. kick. I have the schedule pulled up actually right here. I can take a look. It is 7 o'clock. Tailgate show, though. Come out and support us. Come out and hang out with us at the tailgate show. That'll be starting at 5 o'clock
We're
or
going to
4:30?
have the tailgate starting at 5 o'clock for you guys, supported by Double Mint Games and UWG Dine West. That's going to go from 5 to 6:30, right outside of the front gates of the University Stadium. And you just come, hang out. Who knows? Maybe sign up for our WIP program, and we can get you involved, and we can get you on air, and we can have you be on the show with me and Michael, or on Sports Pack, or on Sports Out of Pocket later on this semester for all the live shows that we do have going on this semester. But I am ready to talk about this West Georgia Wolves team, and we're in a weird predicament. And it's because I'm not used to seeing teams just completely move away. Like, there's, obviously transfers going on with every team. But according to Coach Steve Englehart, there were 73 new players that transferred from the roster from last season, and 63 of them that transferred into West Georgia. So we're bringing in a whole lot of guys, but we're also losing a whole lot of guys. And I think that'll play a factor in how this team performs this year, simply because we don't know what we're accustomed to. We don't know what to expect out of this team. Yes, Coach Englehart's coming from Presbyterian, where he was 10-2 last year, but we still don't know what to expect for him at a D1 level, at the level that this is, playing in the UAC.
Exactly. Like you said, so many new pieces on this team. And not only is it new pieces, there's a lot of guys that came over from Presbyterian with Coach Englehart, which obviously at a lower level of college football. So you don't exactly know how they're going to translate too much to the D1 level. This will be their first glimpse at it. We did get confirmation on Monday at the press conference for Steve Englehart that Colin Hurst will be making the start on Thursday. He also said we may see some of the North Dakota State transfer, Luke Marble, get some action in this football game. So we could end up seeing both these two quarterbacks. But Colin Hurst, I'm very excited to see what he's got for us. We've watched some film on him from Presbyterian. Obviously, this is going to be a much different level of football, moving up playing at the D1 level. But last season, 2,704 yards. He threw 26 touchdowns, and he had 11 picks. So a little bit of a turnover issue, but still good touchdown to interception ratio there. He ran the ball very well last year, had some rushing touchdowns for him. I'm excited to see how he commands the offense, and really just excited to see this Wolves team get in action because, like you said, Brandon, the last two seasons under Coach Joel Taylor, it was pretty similar. We definitely had some vast improvement over year 1 to year 2 with Joel Taylor, but, same scheme, a lot of the same faces. Not a whole lot of new guys came in last season. Now this is a completely new roster. And you think about LSU, obviously, and big college football, a huge new roster this year. Lane Kiffin coming in. It's kind of like that in terms of how many new faces you have on this team. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how everybody kind of melds and meshes together this week 1 game.
So now, Colin Hurst, if you've been listening to WSN shows for a while now, you may remember last semester when we brought Colin Hurst on the playbook. And if you wasn't able to catch that, you can catch it right here with this sound bit that we have for you.
Like you said, I've been in the system for 3 years now. So, and I think, regardless of whether I've been in the system 3 years or not, I think the quarterback is always the coach on the field. I always have to be in command. I always got to know what's going on and everything. But, I think I'm going to have a very pivotal role in this spring, not just because I've been there before, but I have to be able to teach the guys, the new system. It's going to be a lot of new stuff, especially for the guys that haven't been in the system yet, which is, majority of the team. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to get to know who we have out there and what we can do, and I think we can be really special.
And so bringing in a guy like Colin Hurst for Steve Englehart and for this team that's kind of getting used to each other now, I think that bringing in Colin and bringing in that leader, especially from a quarterback position that you've known for 2 years, this is third off season with Coach Englehart. So bringing him in, allowing him to kind of command the offense and having the off season with him, just kind of letting guys get familiar with him. And also, he's a guy that's had success in Steve Englehart's system. Again, Michael, you just had 2,200 yards last year in a 10-2 season, to where I think that he could. I don't know if he can replicate that. I don't know if he can do better than that. But I do know that it's going to be crucial for this team and a big glue guy for the team simply because he knows Coach Englehart. He can talk to guys, and he's seen what Coach Englehart is capable of when he was over there at Presbyterian.
It's going to be so crucial for him, too. And not only just calling, if we have Luke Marble end up being, play a role in this offense as well, maybe a 2-quarterback system. You see that in college football sometimes where just 2 guys are good enough to have the job and, one doesn't really separate themselves entirely. We saw it at Florida a few years ago with Dan Mullen. He had Anthony Richardson and Emory Jones kind of split reps for really half the season that year. And sometimes you can see it the full season if those 2 guys just kind of keep playing, very close to the chest. And depending on different matchups each week, one has one strength over the other one for a certain team. So we could see that. But the quarterback position has been the Achilles heel of this team the last 2 seasons that I have been here. This is my 3rd year at West Georgia. And the first 2 seasons I've watched, we had a big quarterback carousel that first year, kept moving guys around, and really just couldn't ever find a guy. Davin Weiner definitely took the job last year and was definitely the best option on this team, but he had a lot of turnover issues last year. There was a lot of situations where if we had to put the game on Davin's shoulders, you can't sit here and tell me you're feeling extremely confident that's going to happen. He was kind of a wild card. He had some games last year where the game got put on his shoulders, and he went down the field and he found Owen Dupree was a huge monster for his last season. He found Owen Dupree. I forget which game it was now. We're on the sideline for it, and I feel like Owen Dupree was wide open 8 times on the last 2 drives, and it was just Davin Weiner fighting him. But the problem, though, this year is just I feel like there's going to be situations this season with a brand-new roster, brand-new everything. You're going to have Colin at some point, or Luke Marble, whoever it's going to be. Colton Fitzgerald is dealing with an injury right now. We'll see if he comes back pretty soon and if he plays a role in this. At some point, if you're going to have success and you're going to go to where you want to go, the quarterback is going to have to be able to come through for you in these big-time moments. Corey's most important position on the field. Everybody knows that. And for this West Georgia Wolves team, the last couple of seasons, it hasn't been there. I think Colin Hurst or Luke Marble can fill that void for us.
And now, Colin's not the only guy that transferred over from Presbyterian. Of those 63 new transfers that I mentioned earlier, 13 of them come from Presbyterian, and that includes Justin Montgomery, who was the leading rusher for the Blue Hoses last year. Malik Lewis, who had 54 tackles, also at linebacker. And Michael Torres, 74 tackles, led the team last year in all of that. So I really do think that we're getting a whole lot of production in. We just got to see it out there on the field. And we've got to just make sure that, we can still hang with the guys in the UAC because it's no, knock on the Southern Conference at all. But football-wise, the UAC, I think, is at a much higher level of competition than the Southern Conference is.
It's just very different, and that's just for any level of football that you go to. There's a reason why there's different ranks in football, and there's different divisions, and there's different conferences, and there's everything else. And you see it now, and especially when you get to the FBS level, the gap between conferences there is just, now I would say the good thing for us between Presbyterian coming to West Georgia, there's still a big gap there. I would say it's still a little smaller, a little closer together than if you go to the FBS level and you're playing out in the new Pac-12 now, for example, if you're playing at Boise State, and then you go and transfer to school inside the Big Ten or the SEC, I would argue even though you're still in the FBS level, that gap between the group of 6 now and then the Power 4, I would say that's even bigger than what you're going to have to deal with coming from Presbyterian to West Georgia. So it is still a big jump, and it's going to be a learning curve for all these guys. And that, to me, is kind of the only – there's 2 concerns I have with this West Georgia Wolves team, and that's just meshing together. It's a year – and I don't get – look, Coach Englehart has had a ton of success every single school that he's been to, and I'll shout this out too. If you look at some of the schools that he's coached at and had success at, historically, those schools have been terrible. Those schools have had no success whatsoever, and he has gone in there and he has won at some of these places and turned them around, made them winners. So I have no doubt that he's going to be able to do that here at West Georgia, and he's going to be a success. But I don't. And the same thing for Lane Kiffin at LSU this year on a bigger, broad scale. If you're the first-year head coach somewhere, even if you've been a head coach for a long time, if it's your first year at that school, there's going to be challenges. There's going to be things that come up. The first year, I don't care if you're a new head coach or you've never been a head coach before. There's going to be obstacles and different things that happen because it's all new. New players, new everything. Now, a good thing is that we do have 73 transfers, so it's a lot of new faces as well that have to gel together. But a lot of them did play together at Presbyterian, and a lot of them have been coached under Steve Englehart, so that's going to be a big help. My 2 concerns are going to be just the gelling to get going at the beginning of the season, and because we have so many guys from Presbyterian, how quickly can they adjust to playing at the Division I level?
And see now, speaking of the UAC, they did have the UAC kickoff over the summer, and in case you missed it, we have a soundbite here from Steve Englehart just talking about this upcoming season.
Just excited, really, and really just looking forward to getting started. You go through these phases, and you start, and you build a roster, and you go through recruiting, and then you have winter conditioning and, spring practice, and now they're in summer, and we're ready for the next phase. And to me, the football will always take care of itself. It's really about building trust, respect, and love, on a team. But you do that organically. It doesn't happen overnight. And you do that with great effort. You do that with discipline. You do that with perseverance and helping each other persevere through hard times. And if you do that, then you really create an organic culture that will take care of itself on Saturdays.
And I didn't get to go out to this event, but I know we had an interview with Coach Englehart last semester where he came in, sat down with us for probably a half hour, and just talked about how he felt we were going to do. And it was so nice getting to see how much he thought of this team beforehand and how much he thought we could improve. And he wasn't saying any predictions for the season or anything, but you could tell he knew we were going to be something special this year. So I think that's great getting to see that from a first-year coach that we have.
And now, we've talked a whole lot about the offseason, what's happened in the offseason, but let's talk about in the moment, in the now, in the future of this team, where, again, Thursday, they have their first game of the season against UT Chattanooga at home. Chattanooga rolls in here with head coach Rusty Wright in his eighth season over with the Mocs, 42-34 in those 8 seasons. They finished 5-7 last year. But the big story is going to be this quarterback that they have brought in. That's going to be Battle Alberson. So he wasn't the starting quarterback from last year. He only started the last 3 games. But in the 3 games that he did start last year, had 600 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So it shows us some kind of producibility on his end of things, to where he had one game where he had 4 touchdowns passing and he had 2 touchdowns rushing. So he was able to come in there, make a big impact whenever he was able to be called on for it, and that earned him the starting job this year for the Mocs. They have 9 votes in the preseason poll, for the FCS preseason poll. So that says they think a lot of them, and they think that they're going to be a really good team.
And if you watch them last year a little bit, and obviously, you can't watch them too much, obviously, with them playing, in the FCS, it's hard to kind of get those streaming services if you don't have them. But, we've gone through and watched some games, and if you watch their season last year, they had good moments at some times. They had some bad moments. They were a pretty average team for the most part, I would say, last season. When they made that quarterback change, their offense definitely had a switch flip there, and they played a lot better down the stretch. So interested to see how that translate into this season, because they weren't a bad team last year, and with this quarterback change, they're definitely only getting better. And look, again, I know he only started 3 games. You have a returning quarterback there. You have some returning pieces. Chattanooga has that, they have that gel. They have that team chemistry because they're not having to replace so many new guys. Now, anybody at the mid-major level now is going to have to replace talent way more than they ever did. Everybody's going to have to deal with roster turnover because of the way the portal NIL is set up right now in the sport. But for them, it's going to be a much less just kind of learning curve and getting gelling together. I like what Coach Steve Englehart said right there in that clip that we have of the football will take care of itself. It's about the relationship part of it. And that's just true. If you're a good football player, you're going to play well. The problem is, are you going to have a team or are you going to have a bunch of individuals out there? We've seen that over and over and over again in college football, time and time again. I think LSU last year was a good depiction of that. LSU was supremely talented last year. Yeah. They went out in the portal. They got all those guys on defense. They had one of the best. If you look at just roster talent, one of the best defenses in the country. They were terrible last year. LSU was awful. They could not do anything right. They beat Clemson week 1 because Clemson was even more of a mess than they were. But just a complete, derailed the season there. You saw Florida State a couple years ago, so much talent on that team, and they just were 2-10. They were terrible. So it's going to be solely for this West Georgia team, how they gel together, how they come together. And Chattanooga is a team that, I think a lot of people, here on campus are expecting it, just talking to some students around and, talking to some other athletes outside of football, some other athletes outside the football team. I think there's kind of the vibe of, we're going to get this done this week and we're a better team than Chattanooga. And I think we are a better team than Chattanooga. But like you said, Brandon, they got some votes to come to the FCS poll. They're not a bad football team. And with this being week 1, new team, new everything, they got to have our full attention this week on Thursday night.
And now I do think that the key to that game against UT Chattanooga, I think, because they struggled with pass defense last year. They allowed 225 passing yards in 8 games last season. So Colin Hurst can go out there and furthermore solidify himself as that number 1 quarterback here at the University of West Georgia. Show the students here at the University of West Georgia what it's all about, and he has that one game to do it right there. That I think that he can do it.
And I'm all about this team winning. I want this team to win. I want us to have success. I'm pulling real hard for Colin Hurst, man. He's been so good to us here at the radio station, hanging out with us, doing interviews with us. I saw him in the hallway today, had a good conversation with him. Just always seeing him around, and just a great guy. And Really pulling for Colin this week, and hopefully he has a really good start.
Well, listen, now we are going to go into our first break of the show today. But before we do, I do got to remind you guys, well, kind of a disclaimer out there that the optimal way to listen to this show would be on our website at wolfsportsnetwork.com. If you're going there now to go listen on the radio station, you go to the website, you click that play button in the top left corner, and you know what that unlocks? That unlocks you being able to listen to our songs over the song break because we're not going to be able to air them over the YouTube. So if you want to, head over to wolfsportsnetwork.com, click that play button in the top left corner, and enjoy some music.
Hey guys, Joey Prater, the Florida Dog for College Football Countdown, and it's time to get us back to the show.
College students who binge drink alcohol at least 3 times per week were roughly 6 times more likely to perform poorly on a test or project as a result of drinking. Wolf Sports Network and Wolf Radio's Drink Responsibly campaign is always here to remind students drinking should be done responsibly and in an environment that discourages overindulging. Faculty won't take hangovers as excuses.
So now, over the summer, we had talked about this UAC kickoff where all the UAC teams kind of gathered together, got everybody ready, almost like a media day type thing, where every coach kind of like talked about their team just a little bit. We also heard from the UAC commissioner, Jeff Bacon, in this, where he was kind of explaining what to look forward to this season in the UAC.
The stair step, if you will, that we've seen in this league over the last several years is, I think, what you're hearing today is a lot of excitement for this year because we keep getting better. You talk about 2 teams in the playoff last year. I'll be honest, we should have had 4. And frankly, if West Georgia was eligible, we should have had 5. And that's almost the entire league at that point. So that's how good we are. And that's a huge credit to our campuses, our presidents, our athletic directors, obviously our coaches and our coaching staffs and our student athletes, but the commitment that we see in this conference at this level, especially to football, I'd argue is as good, probably better than anywhere else in the country.
Now, there's some bold words spoken here by Jeff Bacon, the UAC commissioner, but I'll be honest with you. Like, the UAC's been fun football to watch in my time here at West Georgia. In the conference, you have Abilene Christian, Austin Peay, Central Arkansas, Eastern Kentucky, North Alabama, Tarleton State, West Georgia, and we have a new member this year in West Florida, bringing them up from D2. You look at some of the teams that's in here: Tarleton State, FCS preseason number 5, Abilene Christian, number 14, Austin Peay, number 18. You just heard Jeff Bacon talk about how we could potentially had up to 5 UAC teams in the FCS playoffs last year, including our very own West Georgia Wolves. So I think that's a really good compliment coming from Jeff Bacon about West Georgia.
Not to say that's some very high praise right there. And like I said, that was a good football team we had last year. And to be honest with you, and I don't want to keep dogging on Davin Widener right now, and he is at Louisville as the backup quarterback this season. But I mean, if you just watch that team, we were a quarterback away. That team was a quarterback away from being really, really good. I believe we finished 8-3 last season. Had a very good year. There were some games we could have won right there, and we could have finished that year really 10-1. Tarleton State would have been a tough one either way. That's just a really good football team last year. But we have that quarterback piece figured out. Could have won some more games, but at the end of the day, though, like Jeff Bacon was talking about, we had that ban still in the postseason because we're still new to Division I, and this is our last year. We actually still have the ban this year, unfortunately. So regardless of how good we play, we don't have an opportunity to go and play in the postseason. But yeah, high praise for the UAC. Very good conference to be a part of here. And like you said, Brandon, since we've been here, this has been some very entertaining football. I was a little, when I first came to West Georgia, I was wondering kind of, what the matchups would be like, what kind of teams we'd be playing. Really good football, really good teams to watch, really exciting football. Both of my first 2 years, obviously last year a little more exciting because West Georgia was better this past season. But overall, really good conference. I'm really excited to see where the UAC goes now, and of course West Florida joining in and seeing how they do this year.
Well, see, now West Georgia, they're put in an interesting predicament in the UAC because, again, we're having to be put on this 3-year ban from making the postseason. I don't think that should be implemented at all. I think that if you're able to move – it was almost like the James Madison thing where they had to go and petition to be in a bowl game their first year in the FBS because they went through and they went 10-2. It's like if you're able to move up and you're able to get that kind of success that early, I feel like you're being punished for it. Like, to be honest with you, I feel like that speaks volumes about how good you are as a program. If you're able to make that jump and 2 years in, you're sitting there 8-3, and because we were up to, what was it, number 18?
Yeah, we were up to number 18 last year, yeah.
Last season, got as high as that. It was like, just look at it, imagine like West Florida next year. We're talking about West Florida going 8-3 and then being left out of the FCS playoffs. I don't think that's something that should happen.
Yeah, I think it's pretty ridiculous. I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on within college athletics that just kind of the rules were the way they were back in 1955, and nobody's really trying to change it too much. But it kind of just feels like the things that people feel are more important end up somehow that people can just go to any court in their hometown and get something flipped and reversed, and the NCAA has nothing they can do about it. But we have some of these rules and documents from way back when college football first started getting played that for whatever reason we just got to abide by those rules, and I think it's ridiculous. I mean, if you're going to join a Division, if you're going to move up to Division I, why is there a ban? Why on earth is there a ban for that? If you're good enough to get in there, why not get in? I mean, imagine if West Georgia last year, and obviously we didn't do this, but imagine last year if we go 11-0. What if we beat Tarleton, beat these other teams? We're 11-0, and we're like a top 10 team in the FCS rankings. Just because it's year 2 in our Division I stint, we can't go to the postseason. You're going to rob those kids of playing for a championship, even if they're good enough to do it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, but the rules are the rules, and I guess there's nothing we can do about it.
Now, looking at other matchups within the UAC this week, we have West Florida making their debut, traveling to number 16, Southern Illinois. We have Eastern Kentucky at Western Carolina, Sanford at Northern Alabama, and Abilene Christian at Lamar University. So while your big name team might not be playing at the FBS level, go check out some UAC football. No matter where you are, we're spread all across the country now, not just like around Georgia. And of course, I'm going to always promote you to come to the West Georgia football games and come to our tailgates that we have going on at every home game. But I think we flip over here and we talk about, so maybe, oh my gosh, Coach Taylor from last year. Sorry, I almost forgot that guy existed. Coach Taylor from last year. He could have went and he could have got at a podium and he could have been mad all about that and produced maybe one of these sound bites of the week.
Yeah, I don't really remember Jeff Collins having many rants in the media, though.
Well, that's because he didn't really have to. He was about as useless as a freaking screen door on a submarine.
It's time for Soundbite of the Week.
So, Soundbite of the Week, new segment that we're starting here this semester. What we're going to do is, without a doubt, there's always going to be some head coach somewhere or some player that's going to go out there and he's going to say some kind of outlandish thing, some kind of crazy thing that he thinks is going to happen. And trust me, we had to filter down a lot of them over the course of the offseason between Big Ten Media Day, SEC Media Day, ACC Media Day, and now the Big 12 Media Day, sponsored by the Big 12, or sponsored by Monster Energy. My bad on that one. And one of the first ones that me and Michael watched, and we were like, you know what, this is something that we really need to talk about, was Pittsburgh head coach Matt Narduzzi went out on ACC Media Day and got asked about what he thinks about the competition in the ACC and how it compares to other conferences around. And he said, quote, "I've said this for many years, regardless of what name we have in the ACC as coaches. I'm going into my 12th season in this league, and this conference is just as good as any conference in the country." Didn't mention any one of them by name, but any conference in the country. Michael, I'm going to let you start with this one.
You know, Pat Narduzzi, at this point, I think he's just a fountain of awful takes, awful, statements. Listen, I understand that if you're a coach in the ACC, it's your job to promote the conference. I'm not asking any coach in the ACC to come out and say, yeah, the Big Ten and the SEC are miles ahead of us, and we're just kind of in the third spot right now. And, we're not that much better than the Big 12 either. We're just kind of sitting here doing nothing. Our TV contract sucks. Kind of sucks being in the ACC right now. But, I'm not expecting that. I get that you got to go out there and you got to promote this conference. I understand that. Last year, he made a comment they played Notre Dame last season.
Yep.
And he made a comment going into that game that because Notre Dame was not a conference game, that it didn't really matter. And he didn't care if Notre Dame beat them by 100 points or not. Because if they lost that game, then it had nothing to do with them going to the ACC championship game. Ridiculous. Unbelievable statement from a head coach right there. That is unreal that a head coach actually came out and said that in a press conference. This one, it's just completely unnecessary. This is a stupid comment. It's not true. Anybody with common sense knows if you're watching the SEC and the Big Ten, the ACC is nowhere within the same stratosphere, universe, whatever you want to call it out there, metaverses. I don't know, all these science terms that Joe Burrow likes to say all the time. Joe Burrow's a big science guy. Anything you want to say, nowhere close to any of this. And it's just completely unnecessary. You don't have to come out and say something like that. You can promote your conference all you want to. You can talk about how deep the league is. And I think Mario Cristobal, to be honest, does a pretty good job of this because I think he does a good job when he does press conferences talking about how tough the ACC is and how it's a very difficult conference with good teams in it. But he doesn't go out and say, we're better than anybody else because it's not true. It's not true at all. It's not a true statement. The ACC champion last year lost 5 games. Okay, that's all I got to say about that. Miami was your best team last year. And really, if Miami had taken care of business, they should have won the conference. And Miami was one of the best teams in college football last year, lost the national championship game. But they still found a way to lose 2 games. They still found a way to drop to some of these other teams along the way. And really, Miami's all you got. This year, Miami's definitely all you have. Unless Clemson rises from the dead, Miami's the only team in this league that has a shot at winning a national championship anywhere near that. So just dumb take by Pat Narduzzi, dumb thing to say. It's kind of a theme in the ACC. Pat Narduzzi says some dumb things. Dabo says a lot of dumb things sometimes. We almost used a Dabo quote, too, earlier in the offseason. We got that. So just a bad statement from Pat Narduzzi. He is 0 for 2 in his last 2 big media statements.
So listen, I'm not too surprised that it came from Pat Narduzzi. I'm surprised that someone actually said it, but I'm not surprised by who said it. And I've always had this problem with the ACC as an ACC guy. I love ACC football. I love watching ACC football. The problem that I have with this is the very last thing of it. And it just needs one word. It just needs one word, needs a tweak in this. And he says that this conference is just as good as any conference in the country. Let's change that. Let's change that to just as fun. Guys, the ACC, you don't need to be promoting the ACC as a good football league because depth-wise, it's not a good football league. But I can guarantee you, the ACC, that's a fun football league. What they have going on over there, you have Virginia Tech that has James Franklin coming in who's about to go, and I think be one of the perennial powerhouses in college football. Miami, that's your good team in there. You have Clemson, who what's going to happen with Dabo? Are they back? Are they gone? We don't know what's going on with them. You have Georgia Tech, who's become a pretty fun team, at least in my eyes. I don't know how Michael feels about them. But I still think like bringing in Brent Key and trying to get that program back on the right track after the Jeff Collins mess that happened, I think they have them up and coming. Louisville, up and coming team, have Isaac Brown, have a lot of electric players on that team that can go make a lot of plays, score a lot of points. The selling point for ACC football doesn't need to be we're as good as y'all because that's simply not true. The selling point for ACC football needs to be we're playing backyard football, y'all. This is fun football. We're going to have a quarterback that's going to throw for over 300, 400 yards in almost every single one of the games that we have this year. And that just needs to be the thing that they focus on instead of trying to say we're just as good as anybody else because we're not.
I wouldn't have any issue with him coming out and saying, like, we're just as competitive as any other conference. That's a word I feel like you can just throw in there as a head coach and just say that any day you want to. And like I said, you can promote the ACC how you want to. I understand that when you walk into a recruit's home, it is your job at your school. You get paid to go sell a kid to come play in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I understand that. I'm not at all trying to get you to downplay that. But you also don't have to go out and just lie and just say stupid things all the time. Brett Bielema's up, and he's over in the Big Ten right now in Illinois. He's a fountain of awful takes, too. He's just saying stupid things left and right up there. And we could have used him, too, for some of this. But
oh, yeah, that's our next soundbite. I was about to say.
Is it really? We're going to talk about that?
Yeah, that's our next one. He's at the SEC is still stuck in 2010, quote.
Yeah,
the SEC is still stuck in 2010.
I want to know what he means by that because I don't really – him coming after the SEC saying the SEC is stuck in 2010, if we're talking about style of play, that is completely not true. The style of play in the SEC has shifted immensely since 2010. The way that it used to be back in the day was you had, Alabama winning national championships early on. It was Mark Ingram, Trent Richardson, Derrick Henry. You go to Georgia, Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley. A lot of these guys, it was a ground and pound football league, pro-style offenses, great defenses. That's what it was. Now everybody in college football has adapted to this spread style of offense. Defense is starting to make a little bit of a comeback the last couple of years because we've seen some lot more better defenses than we saw for a little bit when Joe Burrow kind of lit that switch of it's just offense all the time. It's come down a little bit. I know that what he's referring to is the fact that the SEC is no longer the premier conference in college football is his opinion because the Big Ten has won 3 straight national championships. Sure. I think that I think it depends on how you define conferences, right? If we're going to define the best conference by national championships, then sure, the Big Ten is the best conference in college football right now. If we're going to define it by top to bottom, who has the best amount of teams, it's the SEC. Top to bottom, the SEC is an absolute grind. Outside of Arkansas and maybe Mississippi State. Mississippi State's going to be a little bit interesting team this year. Kamari Taylor's really good. Outside of those two, every team in this league is a really good football team. But you're going to have teams that end 5-7, 6-6 because they got to play each other all the time. And I do think that with a 9-game conference schedule, last couple years just an 8-game conference schedule, but with the way that college football has changed, these teams are beating each other up. I do think that plays a role into what's happened in the postseason because the Big Ten, very top heavy, but you go past about the 5th or 6th best team in the Big Ten, there's a substantial drop off that you don't have in the SEC.
I do want to caveat with and add a team to that not good list for the SEC. We still have Kentucky.
I'm excited. I don't know if we're going to talk about Kentucky later. I'm excited about Kentucky with Will Stein. I think they're going to turn some stuff around.
I thought that was going to be one of the head coaching hires of the offseason because I knew Will Stein was going to go somewhere. I didn't think he was going to go to Kentucky.
I can't believe it. If I were Will Stein, I would just sit at Oregon until the job that I want opens up. I'd have a job, so this is my dream job, and I'm going to wait for this thing to open. Kind of like Kirby Smart did. Kirby just sat at Alabama for 11 years, waiting for Georgia to open up.
Yeah, I was shocked he went to Kentucky. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. But if I'm calling it now. They're not having a winning schedule. That's obvious right now.
And then you talk about Brett Bielema. The interesting thing about Bielema saying this specifically is the fact that Bielema has coached in the SEC when it was quote unquote the best conference in college football, which it still is, at least in my eyes, that's still the best conference in all of college football. But you look at what he did at Arkansas whenever he was there for his 5-year stint over there. 3-9, 7-6, 8-5, 7-6, 4-8. Total 29-34 over there. 11-29 with the Razorbacks from 2013 to 2017. Before he jumped back into the Big Ten and at Illinois, which, I mean, he's got Illinois back. Well, I won't say back to being prominent because they wasn't prominent in the first place.
But I would say the fact that he's had more success at Illinois already than he ever had at Arkansas is kind of evidence against that, wouldn't you say? That he's coaching the SEC and it was a tougher slate for him, a tougher schedule, and didn't have so much success.
Even before he got to Arkansas, he was at Wisconsin, another Big Ten school. 12-1, 9-4, 7-6, 10-3, 11-2, 11-3, 8-5. So it's 68-24 whenever he was at Wisconsin.
Can we also point out the fact that he left? I want you to think about this for a second because we're talking about leaving Wisconsin, which I think debatably, like, okay, if I just presented you two jobs, you can have the Arkansas job or the Wisconsin job. Which one would you rather have?
So looking back in that day, Wisconsin was one of the premier programs in college football.
That's what I'm saying. He leaves Wisconsin. He leaves Wisconsin to go to the SEC.
Jonathan Taylor, all coming through Wisconsin, all at the same time. And you're going to leave that to go play at Arkansas.
And the only incentive to go to Arkansas is that Southeastern Conference patch on the jersey. There is no outside of that. There is nothing because Jerry Jones has Jerry could be giving money to Arkansas. I don't know if he really is or not. And there's a lot of complaining about that going on over there at Arkansas, but. They could be an NIL machine if Jerry Jones would fork some money over.
So, listen, we've talked about the Big Ten. We've talked about the SEC. And both of them have traditions unlike no other when it does come to fans and singing songs about really what their fan base loves and what their fan base is all about. And for this song break, we have one for some of the fans of a certain SEC team.
traditions, rivalries, and passion. You are listening to College Football Countdown, only on Wolf Sports Network.
In a recent survey, almost 53% of full-time college students ages 18 to 22 drank alcohol in the past month. That is why Wolf Sports Network and Wolf Radio's Drink Responsibly campaign is here to remind you there is no drinking under the age of 21. Never drink and drive, even if it's one beer. And add food and water when you drink so you don't end up texting your ex, which means know your limits.
So if you're just now joining us, we were talking about the SEC before we went into that song break there. And we want to stay on that topic, specifically talking about Mr. Michael's favorite team, my least favorite team, some kind of mutts that play football over there in the city of Athens, Georgia. I don't like saying their name out loud. Y'all don't want to hear me throw up on air. I doubt that. Or see me if you're watching on YouTube. But Mr. Michael, how do you think these mutts are going to do this year?
Let me start by saying that the state of Georgia is too great to be run by an insect, and it never will be. So I hope you can just wallow in that for a second over there. 8 overtimes, Haynes King's a loser. Let's move on. This team, this season, I'm very excited about it. A lot of people have concerns, mainly about the wide receiver position. That's kind of where the main concern is because there's a lot of unproven talent there. Defensively, I'm very excited about this football team. Last year, after the Ole Miss game, now if you watched the Ole Miss game last year, the first time around, we lit up 5 touchdowns on the first 5 drives of that game. That's probably the single worst performance outside of the first. Kirby Smart's first year, 2016 against Ole Miss, we lost 45-14. People don't remember that one. Jacob Eason threw like 2 pick sixes in that game. But the defense was terrible that day against Chad Kelly. Shout out Chad Kelly, by the way. Awful day. That's one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen from Georgia. After that game, complete flip defensively. Played really well the rest of the year. Assaulted Arch Manning. Great game against Texas. Suffocated Alabama. Made Ty Simpson look like he had no idea what he was doing. Looked like he hadn't picked the football up his entire life in that SEC championship game. They played really well down the stretch. This defense is so young. So many returning guys coming back. KJ Bolden's a junior now. Ellis Robinson's got his second year of starting under his belt, and he was really good last season as he came along throughout the season. Very excited about him. One key loss, Ja'Cory Thomas. I thought maybe there might be a shot with this new 5-for-5 rule that he may end up coming back, and that would have been a big deal, but he's actually going to go into the transfer portal, so we're going to lose him. But outside of that, and then Amarius Williams, got him from Auburn. The edge rusher, paid a lot of money for him, and he tore his ACL and during spring practice. That's going to be a big loss. The only concern defensively is going to be edge rushing. I don't know if we're going to be able to generate just straight, how we used to do back in the day. Trayvon Walker. You think about Adam Anderson. You think about some of these guys we used to have way back, when Kirby first started here, Lorenzo Carter, Leonard Floyd, if you can go all the way back. I don't know if we're going to have that premier edge presence again this season. We might have to generate it with scheme like we did kind of last year. But Chris Cole is going to be one of those big keys. Chris Cole and Zayden Walker are the 2 biggest pieces on this defense. They both play outside linebacker. They're both going to come off the edge. Those 2 guys are freaks, man. Zayden Walker was a freshman last year. He was so good last year. He got so much better as the year went on. Excited to see how he grows. Gabe Harris is coming back this year. He really turned it on last season towards the end of the year. There's a lot to like there. Elijah Griffin's a monster. Elijah Griffin looks like Jalen Carter out there. He's a big human. He runs right through people. He is absolutely insane. Can't wait to watch him play. So defensively, so young, so many returning guys. This defense is going to be really good. Offensively, the running back room, in my opinion, I'm not going to say it's the best running back room in the country. I'm just going to say I would not trade Nate Frazier or Chauncey Bowens for any other running back in the country. If you gave me a trade for Kwan Lacey, who I think is objectively the best one, I wouldn't trade either one of them. I love Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens. I love that they complement each other. Chauncey's just, man, he's like Nick Chubb, dude. He just runs through people. He's a bowling ball out there. He ran for 200 yards by himself against Alabama last season. Running back room's going to be great. Gunner, I think, played complete. The Gunner hate is completely ununderstandable. Gunner was phenomenal last year. Played great football. He stepped up when he needed to. Gunner's completely fine. There is no concern I have no anxiety. I have no concern. I'm against David Pollock. I don't think Gunner has to improve a single bit to win a national championship with this team. I think Gunner was fine last year. I expect him to improve a little bit. Obviously, you naturally would over the span of a year of starting, but I don't think he needs to. Wide receiver position, Talon Taylor is going to be insane. Talon Taylor is going to be the next breakout wide receiver at the University of Georgia. He's going to be the next version of George Pickens, the next version of A.J. Green. I'm speaking it into existence. He's talented enough to do it. If you watch him run routes, if you watch his high school tape, if you watched him a little bit last season, I know a lot of people didn't watch Austin P. and Marshall last year, and I understand that. If you're not a Georgia fan, no point in watching that. I watched it. I know it's a low-score competition, but he's wiry, he's slippery. That's kind of the best way I could describe that in terms of his route running. He's got great hands. I'm very excited to watch him. Isaiah Canyon, your boy over there at Georgia Tech, he is now here in Athens. Very excited to see how he fits in this offense. And London Humphreys is back for like his 18th year at Georgia, so I'm very excited to watch London play this year. I think he's going to step up a big way. Jacoby White-Helton, he's going to take Zach Branch's spot a little bit there in the slot. Excited to see how he does. He's stepped in a couple times and he's played well. He's waited his turn, so excited to see that. But I don't think the wide receiver position really needs to be that much of a concern, because even if those guys don't step up, even if this wide receiver room is just pretty average, your tight end room is the best tight end room I've ever seen in my entire life. Caden Prothro is a true freshman coming in here. He's going to be a day one guy when he goes in the draft. He's going to play as a freshman. He's probably going to start as a freshman. He's going to be insane. Lawson Lucky is back again. Lawson's very talented, very good. Jaden Riddell has been in the program for like 5 years, and he hasn't gotten to play, but he looks like – physically, he just looks like Brock Bowers. He was running jet sweeps and stuff during the spring game, so I'm excited to see him play. Elias Williams is going to be insane, too. He's going to be – him and Caden Prothro are two – if you want to see peak human form, Caden Prothro and Elias Williams are that. These two guys are both like 6'7". Elias Williams is 6'8", like 250, and he runs like a freaking gazelle. It's absolutely unbelievable when you watch these guys play. So this tight end room is going to be ridiculous. I really don't have any concerns with this team. I'm very excited about this football team. I feel even more confident than I did going into last season. The only thing is to be, can somebody on this wide receiver room really step up? But I don't think it really matters when you have your tight end room the way you have it.
I want to piggyback on that. Like, I think we're going to be all right in running back. I do, especially with Ryan Mosley coming in. He's from Carrollton. I think he's going to, or not. Yeah, I think he's going to be all right this year. Sorry. Make sure I didn't mispronounce the name. But like you were saying with tight end room, we have two of the best tight ends probably possible.
Absolutely.
As a freshman and sophomore. I don't know if you can get two better build people to get on that tight end, because also they aren't just good at catching. Because we saw it with Caden. Watching Bowden, we got to watch how good he is at catching, since he now holds Georgia's receiving touchdown record. And he's also a really good blocker, which is going to help your run. You have two guys who are built like bricks and are going to be perfect for this run game.
Well, see, here's my thing with Georgia. I hear all the time from Georgia fans that we should be the best team in the country. We're always going to be like. There's a thing with Georgia fans to where they say we should always be the number one team in the country. We should always be the odds-on favorite going into every season. We have the best roster. I've been sold on it for the past 5 seasons, which, granted, 2 times it came true. 2 times it has came true.
So I'd argue the third time too.
What is
almost there?
What is different about this team that from the last 2 seasons? From 2024, the loss to Notre Dame. From 2025, the loss to Ole Miss. Sell me on why this team is different than those 2.
To me, the 2024 team, see, this is my thing. People compare the 24 and 25 teams as being pretty comparable. I don't think that at all. I think the 24 team was substantially worse than the 25 team, solely because they couldn't run the football. The 2024 team could not run the ball at all. You had Carson Beck having to do everything by himself. Of course, that caused a lot of, he threw a lot of picks that year, a lot of pressure on him. I think simply just running the football last year was a huge help for this team and made this team just significantly better just because of that. Because if you can run the ball, if you can run the ball for 200 yards on somebody, you're going to win the football game if you can do that. The 24 team did not have the capability to ever do that. The 25 team absolutely could. One of the better rushing teams in the country last season. The thing that is going to be, to me, different about this team to last year, because I thought, I'll still say this, I think last year's team could have won the national championship. I still think that team was going to do it. 24 team, not good enough to do it. Not at all. 25 team, I think they could have done it. I think this team will be better because of the rushing attack is going to be there again, I believe. To me, it's the defense, because the defense was just so young at the first half of last season. I think that now that they've had a full – because they just turned it on, like I said, towards the end of last season, that they had more reps. Like, the only way you can get better at doing something is just by doing it. You can practice all you want to. Once you go into game reps, get those live reps, that's how you get better. Ellis Robinson was terrible at the beginning of last season. That Tennessee game, he got burnt alive by Chris Brazzell during that game. The Alabama game, Ryan Williams dropped a lot of passes in that game, dropped a touchdown pass on the opening drive for Alabama, but guess what? Ellis Robinson was getting cooked by him. Ellis got so much better by the end of the season. Everybody else in that team got better. We learned how to go with the scheme. I think now having a full season of that's going to make this team much better. But I think that's a valid question, because when you look at roster-wise, there's not really anything changing too much from the team like last year to this year outside of the fact that you lost your 2 best receivers. You lost Colby Young and you lost Zachariah Branch. Those are the 2 biggest things that you lost this offseason. I think that's a valid question to say, if the wide receiver room is going to be objectively worse, which depending on Talon Taylor, he's the complete thing of that. If Talon Taylor is who I think he is, this wide receiver room is going to be better just because of him. If he's not, though, if he's just fine or decent, then yeah, the wide receiver room objectively is going to be worse because Isaiah Canyon, even if he's at his best, he's just another Colby Young. But now you just don't have Zachariah Branch. So I think that's a very fair thing to say about this team. And I don't think there's roster-wise anything I can point to say, yeah, I just know this team's going to be better. I just feel like you give Gunnar Stockton a second year in the system, the way the defense played last year, I feel like this team's going. There's no reason for this team not to be – they're not going to be any worse than they were last year. And I think because you got a whole another year of these guys in the system, especially defensively, this team will be better moving on to this year.
Listen, I am excited for Georgia this year. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I think this Georgia team might be the best team out of the last three that I have seen since the national championship. I don't know if they're going to be quite that 2023 team yet because I was really on that 2023
team was still the best team in the country. I don't care. That team would have beat Michigan by 100 points.
But, Joey, you haven't had a whole lot of talking points for us, so we're going to go into a segment for you guys. For Joey.
Welcome to Joey's Prompts. Joey asks questions, and Brandon and Michael answer. Now, welcome in your host, Joey Prater.
All right, so yes, I do have a segment in this show. Well, two, but we'll get to that. But with this one, I wanted to know from both of you, what would be your walk-up or entrance song that you would have play?
So these are two different questions. Mm-hmm. Walk-up song, personally, I think baseball. Entrance song, I think football. Entrance song, I don't think it gets better than Texas A&M and Power with Kanye West. I think if I had to pick one, like the environment that's around Texas A&M whenever that song hits, like it gives me goosebumps just watching it. Whenever I'm on YouTube, just watching them and watching the entrance of it. But a walk-up song is really interesting because long time I was like, you know what would like scare some guys? If I had some kind of girly like walk-up song out there, like come up there, me to the plate, playing like ABBA, or playing something by like Katy Perry or something like that. But I think I have settled on an old Led Zeppelin song, Kashmir. The very beginning of that, like the riff at the beginning of it, just play the first like 15 to 20 seconds of that song. And I think that is the most badass thing just on the planet to me.
To me, okay, so here's the deal. So, I mean, you guys know I played baseball my entire life. And so my walk-up song my entire time playing baseball was Bob O'Reilly. And the reason behind that is because, look, I've been a Georgia fan my entire life. Been going to Athens every Saturday of my existence. That song gets played. Kirby Smart, tells everybody to stand up, and it's time to attack the day. The lights go off, and they blare that song right before kickoff. And there's something about that song that just makes you ready to go out there and hit somebody. Okay, it just lights a fire in me. I love Bob O'Reilly because of that. So the sentimental attachment for me with that would be my walk-up song. Entrance song, I'm biased. We play, the song It's Saturday Night, like Saturday Night's All Right. They remix that. It's Saturday in Athens for Georgia when they come out, so I love that song. I will say, though, that Power by Texas A&M is something
that's
very objectively.
That may be the best
phenomenal.
entrance in all of
sports.
sports.
It really is. It's a great entrance. And they have like a really long walkway, too, when they come out of the locker room, so it takes a long time to get to that. I also like Penn State. They play In the Air Tonight before they walk out. I like that a lot, too.
Joe, you have anything to add?
I'd say I think those are awesome. I'd say my walk-up song for baseball for a little bit now has been 3 Days Grace, Right. So you have that.
It's a good song. Well, we are at the top of the hour, about to go into hour number 2 of the show. What's going to happen here is you're going to hear one of our station IDs to remind you guys who you're listening to, WSN and Wolf Sports Network. And then we'll go into our third song break of the episode before we start with hour number 2. And in honor of Michael talking about Bob O'Reilly, I think we've got to play that for our song break.
You are now listening to WSN, Wolf Sports Network, live from the University of West Georgia in Carrollton. The Wolves play here, now an Odyssey station.
You are listening to College Football Countdown on WSN, Wolf Sports Network, your home for college football news and updates. So if you are just now joining us, this is College Football Countdown, hour 2 of the show today. It's starting right now, but before we get into that, I'm going to let you guys know that in a recent survey, almost 53% of full-time college students ages 18 to 22 drank alcohol in the past month. That is why Wolf Sports Network and Wolf Radio's Drink Responsibly campaign is here to remind you that there is a no drinking under the age of 21, never drink and drive, even if it's one beer. And add food and water when you drink so you don't end up texting your ex, which means know your limits. Sorry about that, y'all. So we are going to go talking into our West Georgia football team that we have a game coming up later on this week on Thursday. That'll be 7 o'clock p.m. kickoff time for West Georgia and UT Chattanooga. And if you're just now joining us, we're going to talk a little bit about that game, kind of like what's been going on in the off season for West Georgia football. Steve Englehart coming in, and a little bit about what they're excited for this season. And I think when you look at this team, the big thing that everybody's excited about, I think, and the thing that people like need to center around is the culture that I think Steve Englehart has brought to the team. I think that Coach Englehart came in and he knew that he was going to deal with a situation where there was a lot of players leaving, a lot of transfers coming in. And the best thing you can do in that situation if you're Steve Englehart is just try and establish some kind of culture early on in a training camp. And I think that he's done that. West Georgia's lost 73 new players in the offseason. I think that's going to play a factor a little bit in how the team performs over the course of the season. But again, we've had an entire offseason to let Coach Englehart kind of coach these kids up and get us ready to play on Thursday night.
Absolutely, and I think we just got to keep, we talked about it a little bit in the first hour, but I think we just got to keep harping on the fact of you have to be a team to win, right? If you have good players, those good players are going to play well. If you have talent, you're going to play well. That's just the reality of it. Now, you may not play well every single week, but for the most part, if you're a good player, you're going to play well. But if you don't play as a team, you're not going to win anything. And for Coach Englehart, like you said, Brandon, the most important thing for him right now in his first year is you got to make this team gel together. The only shot you have is if we can play as a team and play sound together. I've been, now again, I'm not a D1 athlete by any stretch of the imagination. I played at a 1A private school for playing baseball. Not all the same thing. But I've been a part of some team. I've been a part of a lot of teams in my life, right? Every year it's a new team. At Landmark when I was playing. I was playing a rec league. It's a team. And I can tell you without a doubt, especially in high school and middle school at Landmark, there were some years where we didn't have any team chemistry. Didn't get along. A lot of people just didn't get along with each other. A lot of individuals out there. We were terrible. And we may have been more talented some years than other years, and we just weren't as good. My sophomore year in particular, we were talent-wise, did not have really any talent at all in that team. Lost a lot of people, really young team. But we all got along. We all loved each other. And that was the best year we ever had. We almost won the region, came in second. Actually won a playoff series that year, and then moved on and lost in the second round. That was the farthest we ever went. So if you don't have team chemistry, you don't play well as a team, you're not going to win a lot of games. So like you said, Coach Englehart's biggest thing right now is you've got the players on this roster. You've got to make sure everybody can gel together, be on the same page, because the last thing you want is to look like the 2024 Florida State Seminoles. I'm sorry, Chase and Andrew, for mentioning it again. I saw your message in the chat. But you don't want to look like them, go out there and have just a bunch of talented guys, but they're not playing as a team.
And I think that's exactly what Coach Englehart was trying to say in the UAC kickoff that happened over the summer. If you missed out on it, it's kind of like a media day for the UAC where all the coaches have a chance to get up at a podium, really talk about their team, bring some players with them, to kind of like get at least some idea of what the team is going to look like to some of the fans of these teams. And we have a sound bit here from Coach Englehart from the UAC kickoff.
Just excited, really, and really just looking forward to getting started. You go through these phases and you start and you build a roster and you go through recruiting, and then you have winter conditioning and spring practice, and now they're in summer, and we're ready for the next phase. And to me, the football will always take care of itself. It's really about building trust, respect, and love, on a team, and but you do that organically. It doesn't happen overnight, and you do that with great effort. You do that with discipline. You do that with perseverance and helping each other persevere through hard times. And if you do that, then you really create an organic culture that will take care of itself on Saturdays.
And I love how Coach Englehart explained that, trying to build a culture, because that's what you're going to have to rely on early on when you have so much movement going on. But some of the bright side of this is there was 13 players transfer from Presbyterian where Coach Englehart was before this season. Some of those transfers include Justin Montgomery, who was the leading rusher on Presbyterian last year. Malik Lewis had 54 tackles, all SoCon team. Michael Torres led Presbyterian with 74 tackles last season. But perhaps none of them bigger than quarterback Colin Hurst, who had been a starter for Coach Englehart over there at Presbyterian for the last 2 seasons and putting up pretty good stats while he was over there, over 2,200 yards last year, and really solidified himself as kind of like a dual threat too, going and being able to at least get some kind of scrambling ability. And I think bringing in Colin really helps this team because he's a guy that's familiar with Coach Englehart. Guys that are new to this system, he can be like, hey, this is the way that he does things. That's just the way that he is. And it puts a whole lot of trust in Colin from Coach Englehart.
Absolutely. And, at the press conference yesterday, I was in attendance for it, and, Coach Englehart went, in depth about, I asked him about, how has he seen Colin develop over his time with him? He's been with him for 3 years, be year 4 now. It's just a different school. And how he's seen him grow not only this past season, but all through, the 3 years he's been the starting quarterback over at Presbyterian. Really, he's been, part of the team over there. And his biggest thing was he talked about how much Colin is like just having an extra coach on the field. Very smart, knows the playbook ins and outs very well. I'm not trying to go out here and compare him to Tom Brady by any means, but I am saying when you think about, field general quarterbacks, about guys who can read defenses, Tom Brady was so good because he could slow the game down, right? The mental game for him. Tom Brady was not supremely athletic by any means, really. It was just that he was so smart. He knew what the defense was going to do a step ahead of him. Coach Englehart praised, Colin Hurst very much like that, saying, Colin just knows the playbook ins and outs very well. He's very, very committed, very focused, and he's just a good leader. He's got the natural ability to lead a football team, and you get that with a quarterback. And again, you look at the stat sheet, 2,700 yards last season, 26 touchdowns, 11 picks, ran the ball very well. So you're looking at it from a stat sheet perspective. You're looking at it from just on-field play, which is obviously the most important thing. He checks out there, had a good season, but the stuff that matters off the field, the other stuff, those other compatibles that matter of how well he knows the playbook, how smart he is, his just football IQ in general is so good, and his ability to lead is so good, which makes me very excited about Colin getting the start on Thursday.
And like Coach Englehart looking at the team that he's assembled here at West Georgia, having a guy like Colin that you can look at and just be a locker room guy and just kind of like have a guy that you can trust around the other players is such a key component to what Colin and what this team is going to do this year. They laid the groundwork in the offseason, over the summer, over training camp the past 2 or 3 weeks. So we're going to see everything that this team has to offer come Thursday when they take the field against UT Chattanooga. Now, UT Chattanooga comes into this game. Rusty Wright, 8th season at the helm for the Mocs in that one, 42-34 overall record. But they slipped down, went 5-7 last season. But they are viewed by some people as a pretty good football team in FCS terms, simply because of when the FCS polls came out for their top 25. They did receive 9 votes from it. Michael, who are some of the guys on UT Chattanooga that you're going to be looking forward to seeing on Thursday night?
I think you just got to look across the board. I think that they have a lot of returning guys on the defensive line, and they had, now we talked about earlier, they had problems defending the pass last year. They were not very good at that. They did have a pretty solid rushing defense last season, and they got a lot of returning guys on that D-line in the front 7. So I think really any of those guys you could pick out and say, these are guys let's look at. Obviously, and, obviously we were really good last year running the football. That was our bread and butter last year, and obviously a lot of new pieces, but still some identity on this West Georgia team, especially. And I would fully expect that, with Colin coming over here, and again with him winning the job, but also having the opportunity to where Luke Marvel's probably going to play a little bit in this game, and you don't exactly know where you're going to go quarterback wise. We're going to have to run the football, lean on the ground game a little bit, and any team to be successful has to be able to run the football. So that'll be things to watch out for. The other outside part of this for UT Chattanooga would be the returning quarterback last year. They made that quarterback change last season. He came in, played the last 3 games of the year, and played really well. Did a really good job. We talked about it a little bit in the first hour as well, and he threw for 700 yards over those.
So Battle Alberson last 3 games last year when he took over the starting job, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Yep, exactly. So you're looking at that stat line. That's a good stat line for the last 3 games this season. And obviously, he's had a full off season and now fall camp to get through and get reps in. And I'm sure he's developed a relationship with his receivers and his tailbacks and everybody on the offensive line as well. So I expect Chattanooga to come in here with probably more natural chemistry to start off this game than West Georgia does. So for me, it's really the front seven of Chattanooga, as well with Albertson being the returning guy, come back in here, because it's a value and a weapon whenever you have a returning quarterback, especially at this level of college football now.
Now, I do think, like, looking at the other side of this with UT Chattanooga, one thing that they were able to do last season was they were able to run the ball effectively, had a total of 2,200 rushing yards last year, really relied on the run, had 3 games to which they had over 50 carries with the rock. So that's something they like to do. They like to establish the run game. So if I'm Coach Englehart and I'm that defensive line, I know, okay, it's going to be a tough day for me, and I've got to go through and I've got to make plays. That way they're not able to establish the running game in it. That way you get them in a position to where they're uncomfortable. Because you get them in a position to where they're uncomfortable, you're forcing a guy in Battle Albertson who isn't really going to be anything like – he hasn't showed any signs of being like that guy yet for UT Chattanooga, but I could be completely wrong by that. But you force him to win games. You don't let him rely on the ground game for it. You go through, you make sure that he's the one that's got to go out there. You're banking on him having to go out there, have a really good game in order for the Mocs to get that win on Thursday.
Absolutely, and like you talk about with just putting the pressure on a young quarterback, and he's had 3 starts, but he's still pretty young. It hasn't started. I don't consider you really a veteran until you've started 12 games in college football. So still only just 3. That's a fourth of a full season. So for him, obviously if you put the pressure on him, that's going to make the Mocs offensive approach a lot more difficult because they can't lean on the ground game and take the pressure off of him. And I don't care how good of a quarterback you are. We talked about Carson Beck earlier in the show a little bit. I think Carson Beck's a really good quarterback. I think he was a great college quarterback. If you can't run the football like in 2024, he's going to throw a lot of interceptions because you're putting the pressure on him. And when you do that, you're not going to have a lot of success if you're one-dimensional one way or the other. So I completely agree. It's going to have to be the emphasis on this defense is to try and take that run game away and put the pressure on Albertson.
Now, offensive-wise, I think that the game plan for West Georgia has to be put the ball in Collins' hands and let him do what he does. Simply because there was a little bit of a battle going on between Colin Hurst and Luke Marble as to who was going to be the number 1 starter for West Georgia come this UT Chattanooga game. And so Coach Englehart comes out and he says, hey, you're going to go out there and Colin Hurst is going to be our starting quarterback. But he also did say Luke Marble is going to play a little bit probably towards the end of the game. So I think that he's trying to put his faith in Colin and tell him, hey, this is going to be your position to lose. You go out there, you give us good games, you play a really good game against a Mocs team that really over the past year hasn't been a really good pass defense. Allowed 225 passing yards in 8 games last season. So they're allowing passing yards, they're allowing production from a quarterback. I think that Colin is going to have to come out and he's going to have a really good game. That way he can really solidify himself as that starter over Luke Marble.
And what you'd really hope for, too, coming into this game is that the hope for me is that Collins played really well throughout fall camp, but Luke Marble has just been really good, too. Like, I hope it's a situation like what you saw, not exactly the same thing at all, but I'm a big comparison guy. And so for me, like, when I think about Jake Fromm and Justin Fields when they were there together, and Jake Fromm was still the guy, still the starter playing well, but Justin Fields played so well. Justin Fields played a lot in 2018. They found spots to get him in the game because they just couldn't keep him off the field. The hope is, for me, is that Luke Marble's playing so well in camp, maybe that, Colin is the guy. Colin's the guy they feel safer with, and he's been at Presbyterian with Coach Englehart for so long that, he's the guy, he's the starter, but Luke Marble is also very talented, and he's played really well and has had a good camp, and he deserves to get reps. But it could be the other side of things where it's, they really want Colin to be the guy. Colin's supposed to be the guy, but maybe he's not having as great of a camp as they want him to. And maybe Luke Marble's not exactly having a great camp either, but they're kind of comparable. Maybe Luke Marble has a little more athleticism here and there. Maybe he's able to do some things that Colin can't do. So you're just kind of leaving it on the table of like, hey, Luke, if somebody go take the job. It's not that Colin's got it this week, but maybe it's not Colin's job fully. Maybe it's like, hey, like both of you, like somebody go take it. Maybe Coach Englehart's waiting for somebody to go take that job, and that's not really what you want to see.
Now, listen, we cannot wait until Thursday, 7 p.m. kickoff. But that's not when the action begins for WSN Wolf Sports Network on Thursday. And that's because we have our first tailgate of the semester going on right outside the front gates of University Stadium. We're going to have that starting at 5 o'clock, and it's going to run from 5 to 6:30, the WSN tailgate, supported by UWG Dine West and the Double Mint Games. And we're going to go into a new thing here. We're going to go into a song break. And listen, if you're listening to us on YouTube or if you're watching us on YouTube, I know it. We're good-looking guys. You'd like to see all three of us. But optimal way to watch this show would be go on wolfsportsnetwork.com, listen through the radio station. That way you can listen to some of these song breaks that we have going on, and we will be right back here on the WSN Wolf Sports Network.
Hey guys, Joey Prater, the board up for College Football Countdown, and it's time to get us back to the show.
Set head! Set head!
When it comes to fandom, nothing matters more than the fit. The logo you wear solidifies your love. Now you can be a Wolf Sports Network fanatic with our brand new merch store powered by Ozier Apparel. Visit wolfsportsnetwork.com and click About. And now, Brandon, it's time to talk about your conference and Pat Narduzzi's precious conference that supposedly is just as good as any other conference.
We're a
in college
fun
football.
conference.
The Atlantic Coast Conference. Let's get into it.
Just as fun as any other conference. Not as good. We're fun.
Let's get into it. Do we have a... See, first show, some things. I thought we had a stage report. Do I have a stage report?
Okay.
Let's get into it. Let's talk about Georgia Tech, though, Brandon. You told me to sell you on my Georgia Bulldogs here. Tell me why the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets will be a better football team than they were with Haynes King.
So I think we're gonna start here with the running game. Sure, we had Jamal Haynes last year. Sure, we had Malachi Hosley, both dogs. We're losing some production, and listen, I get it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a realist. I love this team. I think this team's ceiling 9-3. We're gonna lose at least 3 of these games on this schedule. But I do think our floor is better than what our floor could be. I think that's where we're going to find where this team's better at than normal just Georgia Tech teams in general. Is that I can't see this team going worse than like 7-5. And it's because the running game for Georgia Tech between Justice Haynes, Malachi Hosley, I think you're going to have to rely on them a whole lot because we're losing Haynes King from last year. You can't just go out and replace Haynes King like he was nothing. He led the entire country last year in total yards from a quarterback. The offense is going to take a step back. The defense, it can't get worse than it was last year. I'm going to be honest with you. If it's worse than it was last year, then I don't really know what needs to happen. We need to just quit the whole entire defensive, coaching staff and fire them because we didn't know what we were doing on defense for half the time last season. I said something to Michael over the summer, and I told him that, hey, Georgia Tech didn't know how to play defense for 11 and a half games last year, and it's because we played actually solid defense for that last half against Georgia in the last game of the season, and we just decided that's when we were going to start to play defense. I trust Brent Key, though. I trust Brent Key and what he's building over there. I trust that he's bringing in good guys. We still have Kyle Leifert in the middle of the defense over there that's going to go through. He's going to make plays. He's going to be a leader. And when you need a leader, there's no better position to have a leader than that middle linebacker that's going to be involved in plays. Almost every single play is going to be revolved around him. I don't think the defensive line can get much worse than it was last year. I know for dang sure the secondary can't get worse than it was last year because that secondary last year was atrocious. And completely go through wipe house, get a new offensive coordinator, get a new defensive coordinator. Georgia Tech's going through this thing to where we're just hiring Georgia Tech guys. We're hiring guys who don't want to be head coaches or be anywhere other than Georgia Tech. That is going to be the thing that Georgia Tech relies on, is that you're going to bring in guys that, you know what, I don't want to be a head coach like somewhere and I'm not going to go run off somewhere. We are true Georgia Tech men. We take pride in Georgia Tech, and we're going to stay here. I think that the culture that we're building there is going to be very well represented this year. Are we going to take a little bit of a step back? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know how good Alberto Mendoza is going to do. We haven't seen Alberto Mendoza start a football game. It does concern me a little bit that Brent Key openly came out and said that he didn't know how he was going to do because he hadn't started a college football game. But I think that you go out there and Alberto Mendoza doesn't have to go out and he doesn't have to perform like Haynes King did. You've built this offense around the running game to the point to where you don't have to have spectacular play from Alberto Mendoza week in and week out in this conference.
To me, I want to piggyback off the defensive side of things that you started off by talking about. There is absolutely zero way the defense can be any worse. That defense was absolutely terrible last year watching that team play. And really, the offense was really, really good for the majority of the season. They obviously only got 9 points in that game in Atlanta against their big brother. But outside of that, really, really good offensive play the entire year for Georgia Tech. The NC State game was an unfortunate situation because the offense still put up a bunch of yards. Haynes King was really good. Just the defense couldn't stop anything. There's no way they can get any worse. Again, we're not at practice. We get to see inside there. I don't know how the Georgia Tech, weight training staff has been, working this offseason. Josh Pate and some other guys, that are popular on media, they've come out and said they've been to Georgia Tech practices, and Georgia Tech looks visibly just bigger than they did a year ago, so that's going to be a big key for them, obviously, just being more physical. Offensively is where I have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, and it's a huge question mark because of the fact that you not only lose Haynes King, who's been your starter for 3 years. That's kind of weird to a transfer quarterback to be there for 3 years. Yeah. On top of that, you lose Haynes King, you lose Isaiah Cannon, your wide receiver one, your best receiver. You lose Bailey Stockton, you lose some other guys. Malik Rutherford graduated; he's gone now. Running back, you upgraded. Justice Haynes is really, really good. Jamal Haynes. I could not think of his name for a second. Jamal Haynes was really good. 2 years ago, year before that. Last year, I don't know what happened to Jamal Haynes. He just didn't really show up a whole lot last season.
Malachi Hosley was just running the ball better than Jamal Haynes was, and he just got a lot more carries.
Just really fell off. But Justice Haynes, Malachi Hosley, 2 really good running backs. Probably the best duo in the ACC, if you had to come out and say. I mean, I love both those two guys, and to be honest with you, Hosley would be close. I'm not huge on Mark Fletcher at Miami. I know everybody loves Mark Fletcher. I think he's a good running back. I don't think he's great. I think Justice Haynes is better than him. I think he got a better RB1 than Miami does. So the running game for Georgia Tech, and then, of course, with Brent Key with the offensive line, I have no issues or concerns ever. He's going to have a good offensive line every year as an O-line coach. I don't have any concerns about that. And then Mendoza. Mendoza's the other key to this because Cignetti made that interesting comment. I believe it was on the Pat McAfee show when he came on and said that they got everybody they wanted to, or retained everybody they wanted to, outside of Alberto Mendoza. But at the same time, I mean, who knows how much money Indiana paid Josh Hoover to come play? Would they not match that for Mendoza if they really wanted him? I don't know if it's that kind of situation. Maybe, and it could be too. Like last year, I know Fernando Mendoza came out and said that he made his decision between Georgia and Indiana. Ultimately, it's his final decision. So obviously that meant Kirby was going out and trying to get a quarterback. Now Gunner was really good last year, but maybe it's one of those situations where Kurt Cignetti maybe felt like they could have won with Mendoza, but they go see Josh Hoover and say, hey, that guy could be really good for us too, and that's just what happened. And Mendoza wanted a guaranteed starting job, which I completely understand after way behind her brother. So who knows what to expect from Mendoza. It makes me feel better that Cignetti did want him to stick around. But my big thing for him, though, is that even if Alberto is really good this year, even if he does play exceeding expectations and does a really good job, Brandon, who's he going to throw the ball to? I got no clue.
Neither one of us talked about. I'm surprised it never did come up whenever I was talking and whenever you were talking. It was just like that. The wide receiver room at Georgia Tech is not good, and it's not going to be good. We lost any kind – we lost Bailey Stockton. We lost anybody that was at least a contributor in the passing game last year. We're looking at maybe DeBron Gatling being our wide receiver too, a guy who was at South Carolina, didn't get playing time, transferred over here, played a little bit last year, played some in the spring game. But it's like if you're relying on somebody that hasn't played in an actual game and hasn't played meaningful snaps and had any meaningful moments, it's not a good place to be in.
I mean, right now, we're talking about, CPU-generated names on College Football 27 right now. Freaking DeBron Gatling coming over here and being wide receiver 1 over at Georgia Tech. That's my one thing. Now, I mean, again, these guys are playing D1, Power 4 college football for a reason, so maybe somebody can show up and play and be really good. Obviously, somebody, has to pop off. Eric Singleton, that was really on nobody's radar when he popped off and was really good at Georgia Tech when he was there. So who knows? Maybe there is somebody in that wide receiver room that can really, step up and be a difference maker. But I just don't think this Georgia Tech offense is going to. I don't think the offense is going to have success running the football, but I don't think the Georgia Tech team overall is going to be able to go where I think Brent Key and where a lot of the expectation at Tech is starting to rise now, starting to get off because Georgia Tech's now off the mat now. They're alive. Dead program for a while. Jeff Collins almost killed it off completely. Starting to come back up again.
Glad he's gone.
And so he's about useless as a screen door in a submarine, as Brandon Dyer would say. So I think for some of the expectation level for Georgia Tech fans, it may need to come a notch down just because you have so much unknown. But maybe somebody will step on that wide receiver room and Georgia Tech can be a 10-2 football team.
So now you've heard me talk about my favorite team. You've heard about Michael talk about his favorite team. But we really want to hear from you guys about either your favorite team, any kind of questions that you have for us. And that's why we created this segment of the show that's about to happen called From the Fans, where you guys can send us in a voice memo, ask us a question, give us a rant if you think your team isn't going to do well, or maybe you're delusional, think your team is going to win a national championship like some of these Texas fans out here. But let's get on into the segment. Now a message from the fans.
At the tone, please record your message.
He's lowering the bar of what Florida State football is supposed to be. Tell everybody to open up the Yoke Studios so Lane Kiffin come to town, baby!
So now for our first From the Fans voicemail that we have for the show today, we have Jackson.
What's going on, College Football Countdown crew? This is Jackson Voles, a Wolf Sports Network alum. My hot take for the 2026 college football season, a 9-3 SEC team will make the college football playoff. I believe this committee will use that additional conference game as leverage to put an SEC team in, maybe like a Texas A&M or an Ole Miss type team.
There's going to be one make it. There's going to be one 9-3 SEC team that is going to make it. You take your pick of the litter in it, though. It's either going to be LSU, it's going to be Alabama, it's going to be Ole Miss or Oklahoma. Maybe Texas A&M. It's going to be one of those 5 teams. But I don't think the Big Ten is deep enough to where they can get more than Oregon and Ohio State, Indiana. USC might get in there. That'll push them out, but that's going to be that fine line of that like 11-10 seed right there. So you're going to be USC at 10-2, or it's going to be a 9-3 SEC team like Jackson said.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think this depends. I think USC is one of the bigger components in this because if USC is for real this year, if they are really good, that could knock out a 9-3 LSU or Ole Miss, whoever it may be. I'm going to be honest, though. I don't think it happens. And the reason I don't think it happens is because I think you're going to have enough 10-2 SEC teams get in there. If you look at these teams' schedules, look at these teams, how these teams are playing, I think they're just going to eat each other alive again. I think there's going to be a lot of just balance in the conference. I think Texas and Georgia both end up probably 11-1 this year. That's probably where I think I got them at. I think Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas A&M, I think those 3 teams all finish 10-2. I like all 3 of those teams a lot. I think all 3 of those teams make the college football playoff. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show with our bracket prediction, but I honestly don't. I could very well see that happening. LSU is kind of that wild card team, and if some other things fall in some different spots, then they could absolutely get in. I'm actually going to say it doesn't happen, though, just because of the fact that I think there's not going to be – I think some of those teams that are going to be in there, like I think we're going to have a lot of 10-2 teams this year, and I don't think we're going to have as many 9-3 as many people might think we're going to have.
I think that there's going to be one of them, though. Like I don't think there's going to be enough parity in the SEC. Like there's going to be one 9-3 team. Like I don't think there's going to be a whole bunch of 10-2 teams. Like I think there's going to be a few. Like there might be 3 maybe, but I think that there's going to be I think it's going to be Oklahoma. If I had to put money on it, it'd be Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. And I think it's simply because Oklahoma has the cop-out of we are going to play probably one of the most difficult schedules outside of Texas in the entire country, to where they have to go in and play Texas. They've got to play Ole Miss. They've got to play Georgia. They've got to play LSU. They have to go out and they have to play, I think, 7 teams that are currently ranked in the top 25. And outside of the SEC, they have to go and play Michigan up there at the Big House, because I think they're traveling there this year instead of hosting them. I don't know.
No, actually, yes, they are.
They
they're
do
going
host them this year? Okay, they come to Norman.
No, they're going up.
They're going up there. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. See, so that in itself, I think that what's going to happen is you're going to look at Oklahoma and you're going to say they're sitting at 9-3, but they've beaten so many good teams to just get to 9-3 that's going to be the thing that they say at the end of the year.
I do think, to Jackson's point, I like how he threw at the end of that, not just a 9-3 team is going to make the college football playoff, but the committee kind of, bending the knee to the SEC a little bit and saying, yeah, you're playing 9 games. We're going to kind of let that slide. This is a very real possibility, a very real thing that could happen, and I do think we're going to have a situation like that where it's going to be, who do you put in, right? If you let's just say, for example, USC finishes the season 10-2 with their schedule. If they're 10-2 and Oklahoma's sitting there 9-3, and let's say they lose, let's say they beat Michigan, but let's say they lose to Georgia by 1 possession, and let's say they lose to Texas by 1 possession, and they lose some random other SEC game they got to play against, like, I don't know if they play South Carolina or not, just off the top of my head. I looked at their schedule earlier, but let's say they lose to South Carolina on a flim, weak thing, and maybe Michigan is really good, but they blew out Michigan, and Michigan ends up being a pretty good team. Because they're playing 9 conference games, is that going to be enough to say, hey, like, we got a better resume than USC? Because maybe USC loses to Michigan. Maybe that's one of the games USC loses, and so now you're comparing it, well, Oklahoma's 9-3 and they beat Michigan. Could that be a situation because they play at that 9th conference game?
Now, keeping it in of the SEC, we have John on our next From the Fans.
What is going on, fellas? A take I got for this upcoming season is I just saw the AP polls released, and LSU is ranked 11th on there, and I don't think they're worthy of it because they got a lot to prove. You have a brand new head coach that you're paying hundreds of millions of dollars for, and you overhauled everything, and you're paying a butt ton of money in NIL. I don't think they're worth it. I know they're 11, but they're they're not worth it to me. It is absolutely egregious that they get the 11th spot. Maybe you put them in the low 20s, but it seems like it's all, one big publicity stunt at this point to put them at 11 for their week 1 matchup against Clemson. So what do y'all think? Are they worthy or are they not?
So listen, John, good friend of the program. Over
Love
here
John Halley. Miss John
at
Halley.
College Football Countdown. We love you, John. I don't think there's so much upside to this LSU team. That this LSU team could have realistically go 11-1. I don't think there's anybody in the SEC that could realistically go 12-0. But on the high end of things, if things bounce their way and they go their way, this LSU team could easily be 11-1. And I think the floor for this LSU team is going to be somewhere around 9-3. It's a Lane Kiffin-led team, and I trust Lane Kiffin on winning. He went over to Ole Miss, and he won over there when nobody else could. I'm putting all my chips in on Lane Kiffin being one of the – LSU is going to wind up being one of the best teams in the entire country this year. I think that it was honestly a little bit low to put them at number 11, and I get that you're trying to put them there because you think that's where it's going to be at the end of the season. But at the end of the season, they could very well be in this college football playoff, and they could very well be somewhere around a 7 seed, somewhere around a 6 seed.
I like the point that John is making, but I think he's going a little too extreme with it. I think they got this right in the AP poll to me, because to me, LSU in my rankings that I do personally, for them, they'd be anywhere. I only do a top 10, but if I were doing past that, they would be anywhere from 11 to 15. That to me is where they should be because they're a wild card. They're a complete wild card. This team, like you said, Brandon, they could be 11-1. They could be one of the best teams in the country. They could win the SEC. They could be in the playoff. They could make it far. Dare I say, they could win the national championship if everything falls into place for them.
They very well could.
But there's also, in my opinion, as equal of a chance that this team is 9-3 or 8-4. There is a complete, it's 50-50 on how this team gels and how things go. I think Sam Leavitt is going to be a breakout player this year. I think you're going to see him kind of return to form like he did 2 years ago at Arizona State, because if you got Lane Kiffin as your coach, quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, head coach, whatever it may be, he's going to turn you into a winner. He's going to make you a really, really good football player. So I think they're going to take a big step forward. To me, I think LSU goes 9-3. There's not enough for me to sit here and say definitively this team's going to be really good. I think like you said, by the end of the season, they're going to be one of the best 7 or 8 teams in the country. Yeah. But I think they're going to have some stumbles on the way that it's not really going to matter that they're going to be that way. Because I thought Texas last year was one of the best 7 or 8 teams in the country by the end of the season, but it didn't matter because they lost early on in the season. And so I think it's going to be kind of the same situation with LSU this year.
And so what we are going to do now is we're going to go into our last song break of the show for you guys. And if you're just now tuning in, the optimal way to watch this show would be going to wolfsportsnetwork.com, clicking that play button in the top left corner, and just listening to it through the airwaves naturally onto the radio station. Because if you're listening on YouTube, yeah, you get to see the beautiful faces of me and Michael and Joey, but you don't get to listen to the songs that we've built into this show. So without further ado, go to wolfsportsnetwork.com, click that play button in the top left corner, and listen to our song breaks.
Traditions, rivalries, and passion. You are listening to College Football Countdown, only on Wolf Sports Network.
Welcome in, everybody. If you're just now tuning into us, this is College Football Countdown. I'm your host, Brandon Dyer. Across from me, we have a Michael Miller, and behind the board, we have a Joey Prater. And I think it's pretty self-evident by the name, if you can read. It's like we just talk about college football. We've talked about a lot in the show today, and it's coming to an end. But before the college football season starts, we want to go out and we want to give you guys what we think our college football playoff brackets are going to look like, and we are going to have our national championship predictions. So, you know what, Joey, I want to start with you. Who do you think your quarterfinals are going to be? Well, first round.
First round. I have Ohio State and SMU going against each other. Oklahoma, Florida State. I have Ole Miss and Oregon, and then North Texas and Arizona State.
We got the Knowles making a return to the college
football.
football
Oh my
playoffs.
gosh, Joey's going full. Oh my great. Joey's just a fan of chaos.
Dude, Mike Norvell returning.
Oh
man.
my-
Mike Norvell saving his job out down in Tallahassee.
Michael, we're going to run through yours.
Go through the first round. Okay, so my first round matchups that we got, I got Indiana as the 5 seed, as the runner-up in the Big Ten this year. They'll host UNLV in that first round. I think we have the Texas Longhorns as the 6 seed, hosting Texas A&M in a rematch of a game they had just played. So A&M would play back-to-back games against Texas. Texas had one game in between the SEC championship game against Georgia. I've got the Texas Tech Red Raiders as the 7 seed, as the Big 12 champion. They'll play host to the Alabama Crimson Tide, which that would be an absolute just scene down in Lubbock. And then my 8-9 matchup is the one that I think would be just cinema. Oregon playing host to Oklahoma in the 8-9 seed. That would be a phenomenal football
game
the first
right
round.
there. Mine, I have my 5 seed against the 12 seed. My 5 seed, the Athens Mutts taking on the UNLV Running Rebels. I have Ohio State taking on Oklahoma in the 6 and 11 matchup. I have Oregon taking on USC in the 7 and 10. And I have Texas taking on LSU in the 8 and 9 seed right there. And we're going to move over to the quarterfinals. Joey, you started this. You're going to go into your quarterfinals matchup.
All right, well, I have Ohio State facing number 1 Georgia. I have Oklahoma beating Florida State. Sorry, Twins. And going on to face number 2 Indiana. I have Ole Miss beating Oregon and facing off number 3 Georgia Tech.
Hold on, Georgia Tech.
The Yellow Jackets have won the ACC.
I'm glad you're optimistic about it, Joey. I'm glad that you have such high hopes for this.
Oregon gets past Oklahoma in the first round. I think the number 2 seed, Big Ten champion Ohio State Buckeyes, will take on the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think Bama goes to Lubbock and gets a win over Texas Tech. I got my number 3 ranked SEC champion for the 3rd straight year, Georgia Bulldogs, taking on the Texas Longhorns again. So a rematch of the SEC championship game. I think they beat A&M a second time and get there as Georgia Texas once again. And then I got the number 4 seeded Miami Hurricanes, champions of the ACC, taking on the Indiana Hoosiers in a national championship game rematch, which that to me would be the highlight of the quarterfinal round, that matchup right there.
My quarterfinals, I would have 1 seed Notre Dame taking on Texas. I would have a Notre Dame winning that one. I would have the number 2 seed Miami facing Oregon. And I would have the Ducks coming out of that one. I'd have 3 seed Indiana facing off against Georgia, and I would have Indiana winning that one. And I would have the 4 seed Texas Tech Red Raiders taking on Ohio State. And I would have Ohio State winning that one. Joey, your semifinals.
My semifinals are UGA versus Arizona State.
That's a matchup and a half right there. That's a
throwback to
choice.
Noshawn Marino.
And then I have Indiana taking on Ole Miss.
There we go. All right. Mr.
Right.
Michael?
So my semifinal matchups I'm going to have in this one, and so I'm going to have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish taking out Oregon in the quarterfinal round, moving on. This was a tough one. Miami and Indiana is a tough game for me to pick. Yeah. That's a really tough one. I'm going to go with the Miami Hurricanes because they're going to have a little more of a break than Indiana is going to have with having the bye. I love Darian Mensah. I love Miami's offensive line. They're returning production. I'm going to go with Miami because I know it's come back. So give me Notre Dame versus Miami in a rematch. They play it in the regular season. rematch there in the semifinal round. And I think it'll be the Georgia Bulldogs taking down the Texas Longhorns for a 5th consecutive time to move on to the semifinal round, and then the Ohio State Buckeyes will take care of those stupid elephants over in Tuscaloosa, get them out of here. It'll be Georgia versus Ohio State in the semifinal matchup.
So to recap, going into my semifinals, my semifinals are going to be Notre Dame and Indiana in one of them. It's going to be Ohio State and Oregon in the other one. I have Notre Dame winning over Indiana, and I have Ohio State winning over Oregon in that one. Bring up a rematch of the 2024 National Championship. I'll give you my pick on it here in just a minute, but I'm very interested to see what Joey has going on here in his National Championship.
Well, I have Arizona State clearly going to have to fall to Georgia, and I actually have Indiana beating Ole Miss out to face Georgia for the National Championship.
That's not a bad National Championship pick.
Georgia, Indiana, be fun.
I like that.
All right, Notre Dame and Miami. I know a lot of people love the Irish this year. A lot of people are high on this team. Brandon over there is very high on Notre Dame, I know. He's got him in the national championship game. We'll see who's going to pick in a second. I think the Miami Hurricanes get it done, though. I think Notre Dame wins the first game between these two, and then Miami gets revenge on Notre Dame in the semifinal. Miami Hurricanes move on to the national championship game for the 2nd consecutive season. And then Georgia versus Ohio State in the semifinal matchup. Give me my Georgia Bulldogs to take down Ohio State and Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith. No rings for Jeremiah Smith in his time in Columbus. We get a Georgia versus Miami national championship game, which if we would have gotten that matchup a year ago, that would have been absolute cinema. Carson Beck and Gunnar Stockton. 1 year late, but we'll get it this year, Georgia-Miami in the national championship game.
I have Notre Dame, Ohio State to keep you up to speed in my national championship rematch of the championship 2 years ago. The two teams that I'm the most high on, if you've been around me, I'll go ahead and say it. I'm not huge on C.J. Carr. I just think everything that Notre Dame does outside of the quarterback play and outside of C.J. Carr, they do so perfect and so well that it's going to lead them to winning the national championship over the Ohio State Buckeyes and Julian Sayin, which Julian Sayin, I would say, might be the best quarterback in the entire country in my eyes. But we haven't seen Julian Sayin at full Julian Sayin mode. We haven't seen him kind of take over an offense. But he does a little bit in my playoffs. But I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, my 2027 college football national champions. You heard it here first. Now, before we end the show today, we're going to run into
we did not make our predictions here for the national championship.
I think it's obvious
You're good.
of Georgia beating Indiana for me.
And then you know where I gotta go with this. You think I'm not gonna pick my team? If my team's one of the best 5 teams in the country, I think I'm not gonna pick Georgia Bulldogs to win a national championship. Kirby Smart retakes his throne.
I didn't pick my team to do anything.
Well, that's a different situation.
I did it for you.
That's a different situation.
I did it for you.
I'm a homer over here, and Kirby Smart will retake his throne as the best coach in college football after winning his 3rd national championship over the Miami Hurricanes.
We will certainly see if that does happen. I will be distraught if it does. I don't. If I have to see you guys celebrate it a 3rd time, I'm going to throw up. But we will move on in our last segment of the show today because me and Michael have been summoned for court.
All rise for the Honorable Judge Joey.
College football court is now in session. All right.
The Honorable Joey Prater.
So, yes. And today's topic for college football court is, should Penn State be viewed as contenders?
Brandon, you want to go ahead and give
Which one do you want to hear first? You want to hear the one that's going to defend it or the one that's going to say
I want to hear who thinks it's going to defend it. Let me guess.
That Penn State should
Michael,
be contenders? All right, here we go.
Do your job, plaintiff. Let's go.
The Penn State Nittany Lions should absolutely be considered as contenders, and I'll tell you why. And it's not really to do with the roster, right? I understand the concern with Penn State in terms of a roster situation. Obviously, James Franklin leaving, half that team left and went to Virginia Tech with him. A lot of new faces on Penn State. They got themselves a steal of a head coach, though. Matt Campbell is a phenomenal head coach. He has done wondrous things over at Iowa State. Iowa State's one of the worst college football programs in college football history, and that man has consistently won and won and won and won again. And he has waited his turn. He's waited a long time to take this job. He's been a head coach forever. I believe in Matt Campbell's ability to be a head coach. I believe in Rocco Becht. He's been a very good quarterback at Iowa State the last couple of years. Just nobody knows. Nobody really talks about Rocco Becht or some of these other guys that came over because why? They're at Iowa State. People don't care about Iowa State. I'm sorry to the Cyclone fans that we have all around the country. Well, Josh Pate's a big Cyclone guy, if you didn't know, so had to throw that out there for you. But look, they have some guys coming in from Iowa State. A lot of Iowa State kids are coming in, and they got some other transfers coming in as well. Tony Rojas, Anthony Donko, Rocco Becht, as I mentioned earlier, Marcus Neal. Guys are going to make an impact there. Their schedule is incredibly easy. They have a great path, very workable path. They're probably going to lose to USC. That's a tough one. They go to Michigan, which will be tough. That's a 50-50 game to me, though. They could win that football game. And then at Washington will be difficult. If they go 11-1 or 10-2, they're going to be right there as contenders. So guess what? Even if the roster is not as good as some of these other teams, their schedule is going to make a way for them. Penn State could be in the college football playoff. Just watch out.
So listen, I want to point out the plaintiff over here. He said some things that I just adamantly do not agree with. And that's the fact that, look, Penn State had to revamp this entire roster, and basically this is all that happened. Iowa State from last year just shifted over into the Big Ten and just took over Penn State with Matt Campbell. He talks about winning. They went 8-4 last year. The 4 teams that they lost to were Cincinnati, Colorado, BYU, and Arizona State. Anytime that this man played a good team last year, they wound up getting blown out of the water in it. They lost that game. They wound up finishing 7th in the Big 12 last year. So if we're going to go from the Big 12 to the Big 10, that's a big boy league. That's where the big guys play. I do not think that Matt Campbell and Iowa State are going to fit into this Big Ten picture the way that my plaintiff over here across the courtroom thinks they are going to. We talk about Rocco Becht being a good quarterback. He only had 5 games last year where he threw for over 200 yards. So it's obvious this team was relying on a run game. And a good thing about the teams that Penn State does play that are good, because they don't play many 2 good ones. They don't play good teams. They play USC, they play Michigan, they play Washington. USC, shaky run defense. I understand that one. Michigan's going to have one of the best defensive lines in the entire country. Washington State has made a living over there after Kalen DeBoer left by going and getting defensive line guys, getting a good run defense. And I think that they're going to lose to USC. They're going to lose to Michigan State. They're going to lose to Washington. And if you lose those 3, who are you going to look at as this team's best win? We're going to let a 9-3 team with Penn State in because they beat a Maryland team, because they beat a Minnesota team. They may beat Purdue. You may have to look at Wisconsin as their best win. You're going to tell me there's going to be a 9-3 Penn State team make it in over a 9-3 LSU team that had to go and fight the gauntlet that is the SEC over in Oklahoma that's going to have to go against their schedule. No, there's no way Penn State's making it in this college football playoff. I don't see it happening, Your Honor.
Both of you made good arguments. Yeah, I don't see Penn State. I have to say Brandon won this. Penn State will not be a contender this year. There's just no way.
You just wait till they beat Michigan and Washington. They're sitting there 11-1, and the Penn State Nittany Lions are taking a trip down to Bloomington, Indiana to play in the first round of the playoff.
They're going to lose every big game like Matt Campbell has done while he's been at Iowa State.
Who's winning at Iowa State? If James Franklin's at Iowa State, they're probably going 4-8, Brandon.
Well, this has been the 2026 college football preview. Again, every Tuesday throughout the semester this year, we're going to bring you college football countdown from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the show today. And again, Thursday, West Georgia has their first home game of the season, and we are going to have our tailgate set up right outside the front gate over there at University Stadium. The WSN tailgate show from 5 to 6:30, supported by Double Mint Games and UWG Dine West. You aren't going to want to miss out on everything we have going on this semester. But as for now, I'm your host, Brandon Dyer. Across from me, Michael Miller, Joey Prater. This has been the 2026 College Football Countdown Preview. God bless.